See, this is when you can badmouth Matthias because he's not here to defend himself. It's his fault.
Out herding sheep. Streets of New York.
He'll be here in just a moment. I think his ride is just pulling up. So we will get started. And I'm going to ask a few questions, and then we'll ask the audience to give you some questions as well. I made a reference at the beginning, introducing the film, that in some ways I find this movie to be, I've seen all your movies, to be a bit of a departure for you. And I wonder whether that's a fair assessment, whether you think about it that way, or do you see this as just a film that's... Oh, here we go.
Just stay out. I'm
Matthias Schoenaerts.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I just had some great dinner. Hello. Hi.
He was trashing you before you got here.
I know. Now it's my turn.
Yeah. We're just starting. You're not late at all.
Yes.
So I was asking whether if this feels like a departure, if that's a fair assessment, or do you think?
Well,
of it that way?
there's a bit less accusations of pedophilia and we did actually harm no animals in this. It was a big departure for me. A complete new territory, to some degree. Working in a studio system in America with British actors and Belgian actors.
Mm-hmm.
And particularly with a script that wasn't mine, was definitely a new territory, which is one of the things that was very attractive to me. That was encouraging because it was new, and I had a sense of relief not having to write the script myself. And I enjoyed reading this, the words of Hardy. I fell in love with it at first sight, so I jumped on board.
Well, this is material that people in the audience may know. Hardy's piece is something that's familiar, but I want to revisit what you just said and ask you to elaborate. The idea of, instead of initiating or writing a piece, to come in as an interpreter, I guess. Not only of a piece of literature, but then interpreting something that has been interpreted for the screen before as well. Tell us about that process. Tell us about why then you saw that as kind of liberating or something you wanted to pursue.
Well, first of all, I decided not to watch the other film.
Yeah.
Or I saw 20 minutes of it, but it's made by three of my heroes. I've always been in love with Julie Christie, as long as I remember, and John Schlesinger is a magnificent filmmaker. Nick Roque behind the camera, even more so, one of my huge heroes. So I found it intimidating, and I decided that I would pretend that this is a one-off love affair between Thomas Hardy and Thomas Vinterberg, and close my eyes to the past. This is a book that deserves many interpretations, and this is a book to me that has such a modern portrait, particularly of the lady, but also of being a man, that I thought it was incredibly relevant, and first and foremost, very moving. There was this thing happening in my head when I read it. That has to happen before making a movie. They stood out to me and they stayed with me. And I thought, I want to pursue this. And to some degree, I followed the same instinct as I've done with my other movies. I pursued a sense of purity and honesty and authenticity in the characters. And so in that sense, it wasn't that far from what I've done before.
You referenced the gender roles, and something I was thinking about as I was watching it, the film a second time, and that is that we have Carey's character, strong woman, and we have not only Matthias's character, but the other men in the film who embody different types of maleness. Maybe you could elaborate on some of those gender roles and what struck you about them, and how you sought to interpret them from a modern perspective.
Well, to me, the guys together form a piano chord, which sort of plays the universal song of being a man, in a beautiful sense of harmony. I think that Oak's character stand out as a sort of role model to me, inspirational, to the degree because that here's a man who's able to listen to a woman and actually see a woman and give space to a woman, and yet still be so much a man, which I think is a rarity, and which I think is I thought was inspirational, and which could only be possible because of this handsome dude here.
So to follow up on that, then why Matthias? And then I'll ask him to say the same thing to you. But why was Matthias the one for this role, and what struck you about him?
Well, other than being a brilliant maybe you should leave again.
Yeah.
No, other than the first thing he interviewed me for this. It was not the other way around.
Tell me about that.
He was like, Thomas, what do you want to do with this film? Blah, 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 blah. He asked me all the questions that I was supposed to ask him, which was great. And then he said, why me? And I said, well, because you can't lie. And here's an actor who's so sincere and so sensible and yet so handsome. And that's why he's become such a big star so quickly.
Yeah.
And so for me, there was no other way around it. There was no one else I could see that could have that combination of being so sensible and yet so manly.
Matthias, tell us about that first conversation.
I need to process this for a second. Hold on. Okay.
Tell us about that first conversation you had
Pay me later.
with him.
Okay. Well, I remember like one day, of course, I read the screenplay, and then I think it was quite unexpected. Was it announced that you were going to call me? I don't remember. Anyway, all of a sudden I get this foreign number. I pick up, and there's this very vivid voice. Hello, Matthias. It's Thomas. Thomas. And I'm like, Thomas? Where do I know Thomas from? Yeah, Thomas Vinterberg. And I couldn't believe it. I'm like, whoa, this is Thomas Vinterberg. You know, he's considered and righteously considered one of the greatest directors, European movie directors. And
It's true. It's true.
no, and all of a sudden I have him on the phone calling me directly. And I was so curious and honored. And I was so curious about what his take would be on the material that I started firing questions. But it was not like, and he felt it like I was interviewing him, but I was just like really interested in what his take on it was. I was interested in what he was thinking about it. And then it became a very open discussion, and it went, it was very inspired. And then a week later, he came to see me in Brussels. And then that's the funny chapter. The second chapter of the story is, in my opinion, Thomas Vinterberg, is someone who has been around for many, many years. So I have this idea of Thomas Vinterberg being 50-something, 60-something. So there I show up in the hotel lobby in Brussels, and so I'm looking around like, where is Thomas Vinterberg?
There's his son.
Yeah. And all of a sudden I have this incredibly handsome young man, vivid eyes, sparkle in the eyes, and here he is. Matthias! I'm like, yeah, that must be his assistant. Thomas! I'm like, oh my God, this is impressive. And so then I realized that the Celebration, who was like one of, it almost reinvented cinema in the mid 90s, was made when he was 28. Can you believe that? Do you believe it yourself, Thomas?
Yeah,
you did?
that's what happened.
No, but I was like, wow.
I started early, yes.
Yeah.
Well,
and then we
thank you,
met, and
thank
then it
you,
was
thank
clear
you.
that
Wonderful. I enjoy this.
you like it. Okay, let me give you some more. No, but what I liked about the exchange, it was very vivid, enthusiastic, and energetic, and that's how he works on set. He assembles a team from which he senses that if you put these people together, it will generate a very natural synergy, and then he infuses that with so much enthusiasm that it generates a playfulness, and I think playfulness is one of the most interesting soils for creativity, and he's like permanently on that track, and he works hard as hell, but at the same time it's all about enjoying the work and enjoying each other.
I want to pick up on two things you just said. I want to get to the interpretation in a moment, but you just mentioned the word playfulness.
Yeah.
Is that a fair assessment, and is that something that you think about in relation to how you work with actors, or you set the tone on a set? Was that specific to this particular set, or is that a nature of how you work? Is that a fair word to use?
Playfulness and deep wisdom. Yes, I do. I do get enthused by working with actors. This is where I feel home. That's possibly why I've been doing theater as well. The character work, the work around these guys and girls, is what awakens me the most. How to get behind the surface of these people, how to get them layered and irrational and flawed and vivid and moving. It's a constant pursuit, and I am enthused by that, and that maybe translates as playfulness.
So how does that manifest itself on the set or when you're working with the actors?
Like a manic, demanding person who constantly want more, and
That's true.
and luckily I found a way with these people, and normally do, to be where I could be very honest with them, and just say when I don't like it.
Yeah.
And then in that way we could dig really deep, and that they were not offended by it, or they kind of liked that Danish directness behind it, and so we very easily found a very honest and direct and safe way of communicating.
Matthias, I want to pick up on something else you said, which was that you were questioning him, you were asking him about his interpretation. In what ways did his interpretation of the work differ from yours or enrich your interpretation of it? Is that a negotiation that's happening between the two of you?
What I really loved, and I was fighting with that idea for quite a while. I loved the story and all the emotional dynamics that were going on between all of these characters, but I had a problem with the ending. I was like, I'm sorry, but Gabriel needs to get on that boat. I'm serious. Come on. He needs to be on that boat. He needs to be out of there. And then Thomas said, yeah, well, I thought of that a year ago. And I realized that if we do so, we tell something that I don't want to tell. I'm like, so what do you mean? He says, I want to tell a story that proves us that love can overcome everything. Because I think that is worth sharing. And we have to make an antidote for the modern day cynicism. And so I let that sink in. And it took me one day, and I was totally convinced. I'm like, yeah, he's so right. He's so right. And then he said something else. He said, like, by the end of the film, when they finally get together, I want to create a feeling with the audience that they feel like almost like jumping out of their seat and be like, yes! and I was like, wow, that is a beautiful idea. If that's where you want to go, I'll be on it. I believe that. I want to go there with you. Yeah.
And that is a huge departure from Danish cinema.
Yeah, if you look at the Celebration and The Hunt and Submarino, you go like, wow, that's 180 degree.
But it's actually right. I did the same thing as Matthias. Just a year earlier, when I received the script, I called the producers and I say, I love it. I'm onto it. But let's change the end. Get him on the boat. And they're like, wait a minute. This is British cultural heritage. It's on our curriculum. You cannot come from Denmark and put him on that boat. I'm like, okay, hanging up, thinking for 24 hours. And then I called back and said, well, let them deserve the kiss then. Let's yearn for this kiss from the get-go of the film. And that's where the casting of Carey and Matthias comes in. The first time I saw them in a room together, it was just ignited. There's this tension between them where I felt, wow, this is sort of meant to be, and that's what we went for throughout this film, which is a very romantic take on the novel. The novel has a much more dualistic ending, but we went for that because we wanted love to prevail. Simple as that.
And so let me ask you to explore that same question from the perspective of the filmmaking. The music, the image, the way you construct the look of the film. Give us a bit of a background on how you sought to support that romantic approach that you're taking with the filmmaking itself.
Well, first of all, in all departments, both in photography and with music and art department, I talked about a duality, about between loyalty to Hardy and the period piece it was, and then modern day cinema, but also specifically in the work with Charlotte, the DOP, we talked about a combination of the sweep in the Hollywood 50s film, Gone with the Wind, and the Technicolor movies that we love so dearly. A combination of that, and then a camera getting under the skin of these actors, getting past the frocks and bonnets and the horses and the gigs and into the flesh and blood of these people. So we wanted to make the combination of these things. And first and foremost, we wanted to ring pure. So those were the words we said. And then we said a gazillion of other words. We talk a lot before doing anything. And then we go on set and then we keep talking. And then it's about time to get something shot and then we start shooting. But the bottom line of it was we wanted to get into the inner life of these human beings and of the landscapes. We ended up shooting this all of this on location and on film to sort of embrace that time and that region.
One more question from me, and then we're going to take questions from the audience. But I was just thinking as you were speaking about using the various elements of cinema, referring back to cinema of a different time. I was just pondering the fact that with Celebration, which Matthias mentioned in the 90s, part of a Dogma 95 movement, you limited yourself to certain strict rules about what you could or couldn't do with camera, with sound, lighting, etc. A film like this, your most recent, is using all of those tools, is very free and open, is not restricted to how it uses sound, image. Can you reflect on sort of that at this moment in your career, and as we look at the time that has passed, how you use a piece like this to reflect your work as a filmmaker now?
Yes, I can. But back then, it's 20 years ago, we signed that piece of paper, fellow Dane, Lars von Trier and myself. And back then, we wanted to undress the film. We were looking for something naked. And we were looking for purity as well. And then overnight in Cannes in '98, it became a success and it became fashion. You can even have Dogma furniture in my country. And it's no longer a revolt against anything. It's just fashionable, and it's even old-fashioned now. It's like wearing an old dress if I start fumbling around with a handheld camera. So I have to look for the purity somehow else. But I'm still looking for the same thing. I'm still standing in front of him. I'm trying to find a truthful moment. I just can't do it in that old dress. We're beyond that. It's 20 years ago.
Let's see what our audience would like to ask you. If you have a question, raise your hand. I'll repeat it so that people in the back can hear it. I'm gonna add a little bit to it and ask you to speak about working on this scale and how you is it on par with what you've done before? Is it bigger, smaller?
It's a bit bigger than the Celebration.
Yeah, I thought so.
I have to say I don't remember what it costs, but this is a Fox Searchlight movie, and it's a filmmaker-driven thing, so it's not a huge budget. I can't remember. I can figure it out. We'll figure it out. Okay. It doesn't really matter to me. There's always too little. There's always too little time, too little money. There was so much sheep and cows and stuff going on. It's all very expensive and took a lot of time, and we needed time and we needed money, and it's always a restraint. The process of shooting it was 53 days, but I have to mind you that was more than 200. It was like 230 scenes, whereas I guess an average script is 130-ish. So it was incredibly busy, and when sheep are involved, and Belgians. No, he was fast.
Impatient Belgian.
He was very impatient and very fast. We were hanging out a lot, waiting for stuff, waiting for a cow to get in position or. And that's how I got to know him incredibly well. I know everything about this man because we had so much time waiting, which is very stressful when you have so many scenes to do.
There was a question in the center somewhere, and then we'll go backward. Yes, hi.
Well, they at least asked me to not change Thomas Hardy's ending. They did not necessarily ask me to make a happy ending. But we had a row of discussions about that ending, obviously. Because for me, if there's a problem in the hand, it's very often in the elbow you have to look. And there was a problem. I had an issue with the ending, and we had to do some rewrites, and we had to figure a way for us to make this whole journey a journey towards that end. The moment, forget about the kiss, that's romantic, that's nice, but the scene right before the kiss, where she writes out for him, I think it's become my favorite scene, because there's a huge fragility in it and a huge honesty in the way she actually really yearns for him to stay with her. And it's a very, very important moment, I guess, because here's a portrait of a woman and a portrait of the difficulty of balancing wanting to be a strong and independent lady and yet still yearn towards devoting to a man, to a particular man. And everything falls into place at that moment. And we talked a lot about that, obviously. And we did not just want a happy ending. I wanted a truthful moment between them. And I think they were extraordinarily good in those takes. Possibly also because Carey fell off a horse right before.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I took advantage of that.
Tell us about constructing those moments
she was amazing.
with Carey. Matthias, tell us about the fragility that Thomas is referring to try to get it right.
Well, I think it's all about surrendering to something, because you can keep intellectualizing that kind of scene over and over again. At some point, it's just, connecting with a sense of fragility and a sense of, desire and pain, and just surrender to it, and then be in the moment and listen to your partner and react to it, and have that entire arc and that entire journey that the characters went through, have that in your in your mind and in your system, and then just react and be in the moment. But the scene, which is called 207, for us, because it's we've spent a lot of time talking about it and fantasizing about it, and we shot it over 3 days. Like the first day, it felt like we were shooting Gorillas in the Mist, because of the weather circumstance. It was like we were like in a cloud, so to speak. And then I think the third take, Carey comes right around the corner, and she falls off the horse, and she had kind of a concussion, but she just realized it, I think 3-4 takes later, but she was really in a bad place. But at the same time, I think it's subconsciously, it's her system revolting to wanting to do that scene, because actually, we all know it, we weren't ready to go there. And I think it was quite in the beginning of the shoot. And all of a sudden, we were 2 weeks in or something, and all of a sudden we're doing that scene, and we were all very nervous about it, because that is the scene where the entire film leads up to, and we were all very uncertain, and so actually I think it was very helpful, and I don't mean that in a bad way, that actually Carey fell off a horse, because we had to come. And I think she thinks the same way, and then we had to come back, and then I don't remember why we came back a third time. But the funny thing is, in the final cut, the 3 days are blended together, right?
Complete camera chaos, yes.
Yeah.
But emotionally, it's very strong.
Yeah.
That's what we went for.
There was a question up here, and then we'll go back. Hi. Question is about casting, how you refer to their previous work to determine how you will or won't use them in a current work.
Well, every actor comes with a story, comes with a baggage of films and a way of doing things. And you can either push them out of that comfort zone or use it to get even further into it. And obviously this is something I think a lot about, and it's one of my main instruments as a director, to find the right actor for the right slice of dialogue. And I've always tried to create layered decisions. Already in the casting, you can layer a character. So yes, that's an incredibly important tool, and it very easily becomes complicated because they also have to interact and not be too much alike and still be part of the same universe. And as I said before, they have to form a piano chord together and yet still be very different. So yes, I think a lot about that. And going against what they've done before is just an extra little gift. that you can have.
We'll go all the way to the back. Hi. Yes.
Well, it's an interesting story about that, actually, because there's a bit of a cultural contradiction in the sense that that's what we do in Denmark, right? and
Hey, how are you?
and the Brits were a little cautious about it. Like, wait a minute, this is a period piece. What is his hand doing there? So there was a bit of toing and froing, and it was actually it got a name. It became the Danish handshake. But yes, we shortened it, and I had to shorten it because of whatever age issues, which was all right. Because actually, when I watch the film now, I find that I've been a little bit stubborn with this. It's a bit out of place, but I kind of like that. It's a bumpy road, isn't it?
Okay, let's see. A couple more. We're almost out of time, but I lost track of where the other hands were. I saw a couple people. Anybody else? Gentlemen, yes? His question for Matthias is about, he used the words love or need. And
In terms of her intention? Yeah. Well, that's a very interesting question, and I think it's open for many interpretations. I'd like to believe, as Gabriel, I think he would stay there only because she comes out of love, because she finally acknowledges what he means to her, and she's finally willing to admit it to herself and to act accordingly. If it would be just a need, it would take away the I think the grandness of what this film is trying to tell. But it could be an interpretation, that's for sure. But I'd like to believe she comes out of love, for sure. Yeah.
I think devotedness is a virtue that is being mistaken as weakness in being a woman, or for men as well. And I think she learns to devote. I think she's loved him all the way through, and she's learned to love him even more. The continuation between two people can create a grown-up kind of love that is not a teenage love. It's two grown-ups meeting on that rock. They've been through a life together. That's this feeling I had. And she's learned to devote. She's become a woman that can devote to a man, which I think is very important. She does not need a farmer at that point. She needs a husband. Well, and a farmer a little bit, maybe. Yeah. Shepherd. There you go.
As we wrap up, Matthias, what are you working on next? Thomas, what are you working on now or next? What's up?
Well, for now, I think this is the last interview we're doing for now, and then I go to Belgium and I have the Belgian premiere of Far From the Madding Crowd, so I get to do it all over again. But I'm very proud of this film, so it's a pleasure to do so. And then I have a couple of days off. Then I have to go to the Cannes Film Festival, because I have a French film that is in the official competition.
Congratulations. What's the name of the film?
The film is called Disorder, and it talks about a soldier coming back from Afghanistan, elite soldier coming back from Afghanistan, and being diagnosed with a post-traumatic stress syndrome, and is not allowed to go back on a mission, and starts to work as a bodyguard for a very wealthy family of a Lebanese diplomat who's kind of involved in shady business. And as the story unfolds, we get a notion of what that condition really means, because the film is entirely told through his eyes. It's his experience, and it blends into a thriller that is all, and the only purpose of the thriller is to reveal his condition. And apparently it's, I haven't seen it yet, but apparently it's kind of powerful. And then I go back to Belgium, wrap my bags, and leave for Canada to start on Lewis and Clark, the HBO miniseries.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thomas, what's next?
I already shot another film.
Yes, tell us about it, what you can tell us.
It's called The Commune. It's inspired from the house that I grew up in, with amongst genitals and academic hippies.
You grew up in a commune.
Hippies. Okay. I was a wonderful time, and I think a wonderful film has come out of it. And it's based on a play that I did some years ago in Vienna, That was a great success there, and now I've shot the film and I'm editing it, and then I need some time off.
Okay.
I've been working a lot
Okay.
with these guys and with sheep. It's tiring.
Well, we really appreciate both of you spending time with us before heading out, and thank you for joining us tonight to present Far from the Madding Crowd. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.